first, we have SABLE fABLE by Bon Iver. This was the winner of our public poll. So thank you to everyone for your votes on that one. And it was actually Karl's pick for the poll. So I'll hand over to you.
Yeah, so let me start by saying you probably guessed that I'm not great with pronunciations. So I know it's pronounced Bon Iver, but if at any time I call him Bon Iver, as my partner tells me all the time, it's wrong. So yeah, my brain still wants to call them Bon Iver, but I'll try my best. Bon Iver, get the name right. But yeah, that out of the way. Big fan of Bon Iver's discography up until this point. You know, just one of those artists who is for me never really missed, whether it's their like folkier stuff on, you know, For Emma, or, you know, the self-titled that came after that, or, you know, the more experimental folk and electronic sounds of the last two records. Yeah, just always kind of enjoyed what they've been bringing. Just love Justin Vernon's other work too, in like Big Red Machine, some of his solo stuff. Whenever he turns up for a feature, you know, just always seems to lift the track that he appears on. So yeah, this was an easy pick for this month, and I think overall it's another solid album, albeit maybe not their best. But then I will caveat that by saying, you know, they're operating at a very high bar for me on that front, I would say, especially if you look at, you know, some of their other albums like the self-titled and you know, their last two records as well. I hold those in quite high esteem. So yeah, that said, you know, it's one of those, it's not quite a double album. I think when, you know, SABLE came out last year, it felt a little incomplete to me. Absolutely love Speyside. For me, that's instantly a Bon Iver classic. Just an absolutely beautiful song. Award season with that gorgeous a cappella passage at the end too. But yeah, it just didn't feel like a full project. And I think, you know, knowing now that it is like the prologue to the fABLE project rather than, you know, something to be taken in its own right, I think it makes more sense. But onto the fABLE side itself, and it feels very much like where, you know, SABLE is the more kind of stripped back, maybe the return to the earlier sound. fABLE's more like very much a continuation of what's come more recently, you know, mixing a lot of different styles together. And, you know, it's got those kind of experimental like pop elements to it. But there's also, I'd say the additional thing that it's got here is definitely like that soul and gospel influences that are coming through more prominently on this one. Straight away, you know, Everything Is Peaceful Love. We get this like synth-soaked like pop tune. Walk Home has got almost like a hip-hop beat about it. You've got Justin Vernon's vocals like cutting in beautifully over the top of that, you know, that beat sound. Day One, similar as well, got the kind of like gospel harmonies and a bit of R&B flair going on. Same as well with I'll Be There, similar kind of story. And then, yeah, you've got Danielle Haim, who rocks up on If Only I Could Wait, which is, again, this kind of like synth-drenched ballad. And then there's a rhythm, which is kind of I'd say it's the closest moment on the fABLE side to what we get on the SABLE side. You know, that old school Bon Iver sound. It's, you know, really tender. There's like a nice delicate brass arrangement on there. And yeah, it's just a project that kind of flies by. It kind of comes in, does its thing, and then heads off. So I'd say overall, quite an enjoyable, quite an eclectic listen. Doesn't overstay its welcome. And I like, you know, being a fan of, you know, all the styles that they bring to the table. I like how this is the first time they've kind of done one where it's like the SABLE EP is the more traditional folky side, throwback to their earlier sound. And then the fABLE side is that more forward-thinking, genre-bending, modern style that they've kind of tapped into on the last few records. So I'd say, yeah, I really enjoyed it. I think if it's missing anything for me, I would say it would be, the emotional heft that I know that they can bring. My favorite music is the stuff that, moves me. And I think Bon Iver at their best do that very well. I'd say Speyside is definitely the track here that does that for me. And I just wish there was maybe, more of those moments and, less of the polish and more of the heart, I would say. But other than that, decent album for me, but maybe not competing with their best work.
Right. So broadly positive.
Mm.
Kiley, what did you make of which way around is it? SABLE, fABLE?
At least this one.
I'm getting so confused with this.
Yeah,
Fable, SABLE.
Saber Fable. Yeah, this for me has been a surprise of the year, and it's a good surprise. And I kind of share the same sentiment as Karl, that I don't think Justin Vernon has put out a record that I haven't really liked. For Emma, I don't remember how, but caught on to that one really early, and it's got a special place, or my wife and I, when we first started dating, we would play that record and smoke cigarettes in the bathroom, that was like our thing. And I always have good memories of that. But then I kind of really got burnt out on the cabin in the woods narrative and that kind of thing. And I think he did a good job adjusting with the second record. And then, the last two, just taking it to a whole new place. Which I loved both those records as well. And so when that EP came out, and I kind of went back to For Emma, I liked those songs, but I was like, man, I really don't want him to do another whole album of this, because it feels like he was just building so much. And I let this one sit for like a week before I got into it, because I wasn't, as much as I like Bon Iver, I wasn't like champing at the bit about it. And like once I did, I mean, I've been spinning this record so much, and I think it's, the last track on Bon Iver was Beth Rest, which was this like synth ballad that will keep the actor theme for the podcast today. I think he wrote that after Heath Ledger died. And so hitting that kind of synth emotional piece, like I remember that song hit me really hard when that album came out, and it built upon what he'd been doing. And I feel like the Fable portion here, he kind of comes back and does an entire record of that. And so like Karl, I think there's like a ton of heart in this album. I don't know, maybe it's just the difficulty of the times, but this is the most human record that he's put out in a few records, and just big connect with it. Everything is peaceful love. Like it's got those like Phil Collins drum machines on it, and From has like, Bruce Springsteen Tunnel of Love era feel to it with those fat synths. And it's just, I think it's an interesting record because it sounds very current, but it also has this like kind of mid to late 80s feel to it. And, just that's like the music that I grew up on. So I think it hits me like in a way there. And so anyway, long story short, after the pause on it, I've absolutely loved it, and I think it could have just been the EP and then Fable released as its own thing, because I find myself each time kind of just skipping to disc 2, even though I think those first 3 songs are really good too. Just it makes the project feel kind of disjointed.
So there we go. Ultimately, big fan.
Big fan.
But slightly put out by the arrangement with this kind of EP with a.
Yeah, and I read
album.
that I was looking at picking up the vinyl, and I read it's a nightmare where some sides are different. Some sides are 33, some are 45, some have one song, and it's just like, I'm not going to go to that trouble. I'll just stream it. Sorry.
Typical Vernon kind of
Yeah.
complicated arrangements. Yeah. Okay. So I think overall you guys very, very positive about it, with maybe different views on the kind of EP with the fABLE side added afterwards. Which I think you both know I was a bit that took me a while to kind of adjust to the whole thing, because I was like, I invested what I felt was quite a bit into the EP the end of last year and really loved it. So then to have this kind of just chucked back in again, I don't know. There's something I don't love about that, to be honest. But anyway, briefly with Bon Iver, my sort of read on his kind of growth or whatever. I mean, for Emma, like, just one of the best albums for me in a discography. And at the time, being at university, everyone was like picking up an acoustic guitar. It was one of those types of albums. It was a big cultural moment, and around the same time as Fleet Fox's debut as well. This was this kind of new folk kind of movement. So that one will always keep a very strong place for me. The one afterwards, really enjoyed as well. Obviously, different direction, and then the ones in between has kind of coincided with my kind of less focused look at new music at the time, so I'm not quite as familiar. I think 22 Million I listened at the time and broadly enjoyed it, but didn't kind of dive in as much as maybe I should. And then I've not actually listened to. So this is kind of diving back in. The EP was the starting point. Like I say, the end of last year, I really loved it. And like I say, I've been trying to wrap my head around what's followed with fABLE and how it works together as two. I still don't love that arrangement of it, but there we go. I mean, for me, the lopsided part of it is actually SABLE being the strong element, and fABLE, there's good elements on it, but not loving that as much. And it's kind of, I was reading the interviews and Vernon saying that fABLE is the happy Bon Iver, and maybe I don't like happy Bon Iver. So that's maybe something to take from this. But Everything is Peaceful Love is my favorite element of fABLE. Very kind of Jack Johnson vibes. Other ones I really enjoyed: Short Story, Day One, which you referred to before. Can I Get a Rewind? Just can't help but think about Greg David there, even though it's a very, very different song. I'll Be There, and If Only I Could Wait. That for me is that sort of list of songs from fABLE, which I really am enjoying. I think what he does very well is create what Kiley you're referring to, with that kind of late 80s kind of big synth inspired pop. But I just find that the other tracks, which I haven't listed, just not grab me as much, and it kind of, I don't know, is not the side I would listen to more than I would with that first shorter chunk of the album in total. So I think what I end up with is a very good album, but not one which I loved massively and didn't feel really emotionally invested in. And like I say, just back to, in a nutshell, Bon Iver when he's upset, thumbs up. Bon Iver when he's happy, I'm not as into. So says more about me than him, probably.
Sounds like you're moving back to 2017.
That's
2017. 2007. Excuse me.
Yeah. If only.
Yeah.
If only. So there we go. I think generally strong Strong comments for SABLE fABLE with our first album there.